Welcome to Latitude 40, brought to you by the Furneaux Collective. This podcast celebrates the heart, soul and history of the Furneaux Group, told by the people who call these islands home. Here we share stories of island life, of resilience and connection, of land and sea, of old ways and new beginnings, from the windswept shores to the heart of our communities. Each episode captures a piece of what makes this island life so unique. So islanders and visitors alike, settle in and join us as we explore the stories that shape the spirit of the Furneaux Islands, one voice at a time. Hello and welcome to Latitude 40. I'm Jackie Cooper. Thank you so much for joining me today. There's something about island life that draws people in, and sometimes it keeps them there. For some, it's the work. For others, it's the people. And for many, it's the quiet full of a place that feels just a little bit different from anywhere else. Today, I'm sitting down with Spud and Kim Murphy, two people whose lives have been shaped by the Furneaux Group of Islands, by hard work, by community, and by a shared sense of adventure. But their story doesn't stop on these islands. About 60 kilometres north of Flinders Island, in the middle of Bass Strait, lies Deal Island, the largest of the Kent Group. These islands are the remnants of an ancient land bridge that once connected Tasmania to mainland Australia thousands of years ago. On a clear day when travelling north to Killiecrankie, you can see Craggy and sometimes Deal Island beyond Craggy. Today, it's a remote national park, but for much of its history, it has been a place shaped by Aboriginal heritage, marked by the isolation of its caretakers and lighthouse keepers, and remembered as a resting place for those lost at sea. And for Spud and Kim, it became more than just a place on the map. They didn't just visit Deal Island, they lived there, not once, not even twice, but 5 times, as caretakers of one of Tasmania's most remote and remarkable places. This is their story. Thank you for joining me today, Spud and Kim. Let's start with you, Spud. Take us back to how you ended up here on Flinders Island.
Well, my next-door neighbour, an old Scotsman, used to visit Flinders. In them days, used to fly from Welshpool to Flinders with Prom Air. He had a fishing trip coming over here for 5 days when I was about 19 years old. I came with him for the 5 days, and he was great friends of the Aikens. We had the run of the place, really. We stopped at the Interstate Hotel for a bit, and we also stopped at North East River and fished and stopped at Polana. It was a terrific trip, and I enjoyed the whole thing. And after that trip, I was going to come back, and I did probably about 3 years later and just kept coming back.
So what was it about the island that made you want to come back and eventually stay?
Well, I'm mostly a pretty antisocial person, I think, and I liked isolated and probably wild places, and it was sort of everything I really liked in somewhere to live. I never really wanted to live in a city or a town, so I just kept coming back. I worked on the island and I'd leave again. Sometimes I go back to the mainland to work. I used to work in the milk factory in the spring. Sometimes I come back to Flinders the next year and work on the scallop boat, and it just went on like that until eventually I met my other half and stayed.
And got to experience the island full time. So Kim, your move came through family. What do you remember about arriving and settling in?
I'd been here before a couple of times and found it very different to the mainland. It was just quiet and all the old cars on the island. Everyone had an old bomb. And I was never a pub person, but everyone went to the pub, which was a community thing, which I found difficult to start with, but you settle into it. I was with my parents, so it was homey. That was my first experience of Flinders Island, was landing on the island. It was just a bit of a shock, really.
It's completely different to anywhere else?
Yeah.
So, Spud, when we caught up to chat about your story, you mentioned something that stayed with me. You said you don't have to be qualified to get a job here. You just have to be able to do everything. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, you just be able to turn your hand to most anything. And in my time on the island, I've had Work on fishing boats, cray boats, scallop boats. And I've also spent time building houses, working on farms. I've made rock walls and I've dug trenches and just about anything that come along, really. And as long as you're willing to have a go at anything, you'll get on Flinders Island. And people appreciate your efforts and you keep getting work.
So you've turned your hand to all sorts of work then over the years, and some of that work took you off this island for parts of the year. Yeah, what did a typical year look like for you at the very beginning?
At the very beginning, I came back to Flinders when I was about 22 and I stayed for 3 months, and that was mostly doing odd jobs. I don't know whether I even went fishing that year, and then I left again and went back to Victoria, and for 3 years I'd go back and work in the milk factory there in the flush of the season, which ran from about September to about December, and then the work get a bit scarce and I'd get sick of it and I'd come back to Flinders. A couple of times I went north, but generally ended up back here working on fishing boats, cray fishing or scalloping or something. I did that for probably 3 or 4 years until I eventually bought a little place on Flinders, a little house in Gunter Street in Lady Barron, which was only a bit of a shack. I think it cost me about 18 grand or something back then.
It's a bargain. Bargain today.
I bought it off Ray Hughes. And before that it belonged to Keith Everett.
So, Kim, many islanders know you through your various work roles. Can you share with us, your work contribution to the Flinders Island community?
When I first came here, I worked down at the fish factory, splitting scallops. Great job.
You're not.
Then, luckily, they were looking for a cleaner at the tavern. So I took that job on. I worked as a cleaner and as a waitress. You did a bit of everything at the tavern then. And I did that for 12 months. It was then with child. I worked up until about 8 months, I think, and then I had to leave the island to have the baby back then. You went a month before, I think it was. I didn't work for a few years and then I got offered a job at the bank. Spud was fishing at the time and it was off season, and you do it pretty tough when you're crayfishing, or we did. Crayfishing, we got 3 children. I had 2 when I came to the island. So the bank manager knew me and knew us, and he asked me if I'd like to try at the bank. So I worked at the bank then for a few years.
Isn't that great?
It was good. He saved our bacon, really, because the off-season was really hard. Spud had to look for work, so I luckily got a job. I've worked for a couple of stints at FIA. I worked in the council offices for a few years, starting as reception, worked my way up to property and rates. I was there for a while. Then I think I worked at the hospital for a little while. I worked at the bank for quite a while, and then our youngest fella had to go away to school and I went with him, but I went and worked at the Westpac away with him. Oh,
that was good.
And then I came back after nearly 12 months and he stayed and boarded because he was only in year 8 when I took him. So for the first year I was with him and he did it the next couple of years on his own. And I came back and worked at the bank and it closed on us. So it became an agency. Metro Post Office agency. So I worked there for a while too. I've done it all. Now I'm casual at the moment at the doctor's surgery, but I've worked there for 7 or 8 years. But when I retired, I stayed on as a casual. Yeah, and that was the best job. I started with June. It was really good. June and Barb, yeah.
So life on Flinders has its own rhythm, but every now and then something comes along that takes you somewhere even more remote. Out in Bass Strait, Deal Island has long offered refuge to those navigating what can be wild seas. In 1848, a lighthouse was built high above the water, the highest lighthouse in the Southern Hemisphere, guiding ships through what could be a dangerous stretch of ocean. For generations, lighthouse keepers and their families lived there in isolation, maintaining the light and watching over the sea. These days, the light's no longer active, but the responsibility of caring for the island continues through volunteer caretakers. And for you both, it all began with a trip in the late 1990s. Spud, take us back to your first trip to Deal. How did that come about?
I've had a few trips to Deal, working with abalone divers. That was probably in the 80s. We did a survey there on a boat called the Kathleen Delmar. Divers from Flinders, I was working with one at the time, with an abalone diver. And we were supposed to do Deal and Hogan's and Curtis Group, just surveying the amount of stunted blacklip abalone that were there, which we did, but we never got to Curtis because it was blowing a gale of northeast and we got stuck at Hogan's. And we worked there and we worked at Deal. And then I went some years later when they opened it up to the Tassie divers. I allowed them an extra quota of stunted abalone and they could catch the blacklip at Deal and Hogan's and Sisters Islands, some at North East River. And I did a trip on the Terralina with Peter Cosman. I think I was actually cooked that trip. I don't think I even worked in the dinghy. Yeah. And I just got to like the place, and it's quite a different experience working in a dinghy at Deal. In that particular time we were working down along the southwest side of the island. There's big caves and the divers would be swimming up into the foot of a cave and you're below an 800-foot cliff.
Oh, wow.
And,
spectacular.
Just spectacular. And the water was always an inky blue and quite deep. Deal Island being a very high island, there's a lot of steep cliffs drop into fairly deep water, or comparatively deep water, yeah. And so I first went there then and got to like it. I actually met the lighthouse keeper and that on the first trip, and they were there up until the early 90s when they became redundant.
And do you remember who they were?
Yeah, that was Stan and Shirley Gray. We actually met Shirley and got to know her fairly well. When she returned years after they finished as a lighthouse keeper, she returned to the island with Stan's ashes while we were there one trip.
Oh, that's pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Kim, can you describe your first impressions of Deal Island upon arrival?
It was heaven. I'd spent 9 hours on a really slow boat and I had seasickness. So I was sick for 9 hours and just to get onto that jetty was beautiful. And it was stunning. Yeah, when I got there.
99 we did that.
99.
Yeah, we did a trip with Rob Holloway and Roger Watson to re-roof the old original lighthouse keeper's house, superintendent's house, which has become a museum and still a museum today. But we had to re-roof it, and that was the reason for that trip. We went with Mike Nichols on his boat.
Oh, I was just wondering that because you had to have big long lengths of roofing.
Which was loaded down with a couple of tonne of roofing. Very slow trip.
And it went side to side, front to back, all the way. And it was like we weren't even moving. It was just, I'd say to Spud, are we moving? Yes, we are moving. It's
When we turned into Murray Pass, the tide runs particularly strong, and on a flood tide which runs down to the south. So as you turn into Murray Pass, I looked at the GPS on Mike's boat and it was doing 1 knot.
Oh, Kim, no wonder you were... That's a long trip, isn't it, when you're sick?
So it took us quite a while to get around the cliff and into East Cove.
I was regretting putting my hand up saying that you fellas need a cook.
Yes, I bet you were. So it's pretty incredible to think people have been traversing the Kent Group for thousands of years, long before they were separated by the rising seas. Spud, what appealed to you about taking on the caretaker role?
Well, since that trip, Deal was in a bit of a quandary for a while between the time the lighthouse keepers left and when 2001 they declared it a national park. They had a varied sort of a history, I suppose you'd say, in that time. They had fire on the island which burnt the lighthouse. They had all sorts of things going on. But eventually the Tasmanian government declared it a national park, and some years later it became a marine park as well. It's just a spectacular place. And once visited there, we were keen to go back, and the caretaker program started in 2001. And it was about then that I was working with the Aboriginal Association in Lady Barron, doing house maintenance. In 2011, I was due for long service leave. So when Kim was working casual at the time, we applied about 2 years before to the Ranger, Wayne Dick in Whitemark, to get a job there as a caretaker, which was a seasonal thing. So you went for 3 months, but whatever season of the year. And the first time we went in 2011 was in the autumn, which is probably the best time in Bass Strait anyway. And it was a terrific trip. And we just kept wanting to go back, and we just kept getting the opportunity a couple of times. I think 2014 we did the summer stint, and then the people who were supposed to do the springtime pulled out for some reason, for health reasons, or their son was sick or something. So the ranger invited us to go back again. So we did 6 months that year, or 5 months.
He had trouble getting someone and we were handy.
Being on Flinders is very handy, and there's a couple of times why we've got to go back a bit more than probably somebody else would, because they just ring us up and say, oh, can you do this? And
we've actually done a caretaker for a couple of weeks when someone was injured. One of the caretakers went over to Erith and he got injured and they had to fly him and his family off. So there's people in the bay that had been caretakers before in a boat, and Wayne wanted us to go over, so we had to organise ourselves, and they looked after it till we got there for 2 weeks till the next lot come. We've been extremely lucky.
Pretty short notice to get all your supplies.
Yeah,
and how do you prepare all your supplies, Kim, for that sort of isolation?
You ask people. We had actually met some caretakers before, so we asked around, got a list off somebody, but they were a vegetarian, so which was fine. Yeah. We just had to work out, we had to take protein in a different way. So not every time it worked out. The 4-month stint, that was hard because you had to carry all your food and all your beverages and all that sort of stuff for 4 months. It's hard, but we did.
That was in 2021, and that was after the COVID thing, and they actually rang us up and asked us where we'd go, and that was our last time we went. But the people who were there in the autumn that year were only there for 2 months, so they said, well, we do May and then the winter. But in the winter you can't grow anything in the garden there. By that time they'd abandoned the jetty. We'd been working on the airstrip and different other ones had, so they started to fly in again. They used to fly in back in the 90s. Hughie Sinclair used to fly in there, but then they let the airstrip get overgrown. But when the jetty was virtually condemned, the straight lady couldn't take us there anymore. And they started to fly in with Frank Bullerand.
Therein laid another problem, because if you went with James in the boat, you could take enough provision, but on the plane you could take limited. Just enough. But we did discover you can keep eggs in the fridge for 4 months.
That's incredible.
Oh, I think so. But they were fine.
Greasing them first.
We grease half them up, and the other half.
And so what do you grease them with?
Vaseline.
Right. So you grease each egg, pop it back in the carton and back in the fridge, and it stops the oxygen.
It seals up, yeah. And the last egg I've got a photo somewhere of the egg, and it had nice round yolk. So I thought,
didn't have any mishaps
with
the
eggs.
Learn.
Yeah, you take some dry foods.
I guess you can fish at certain spots.
Yeah, the fishing's not great there, and also being a marine park, Murray Pass is part of the section you're not allowed to fish at all. So you're restricted to either fishing off the rocks, little squally cove, or you've got to go over on the northeast or east side and fish.
Is that quite a trek?
Well, I used to go to Winter Cove fishing if it's blowing hard westerly, and that's 4 kilometre walk down a steep hill.
But it's worth it when he catches fish.
And we used to catch mullet and small salmon there, which were always good for a feed. At one stage there on the first year, if I didn't get any fish, I'd get a feed of mushrooms on the way home.
Oh, great.
Fishing on deal's not great unless you like rockfish.
So, Kim, can you describe the wildlife, the sea and the bird life that you discovered while you were there?
On their migration, you'll have flocks come through of birds that you don't see here. We did see the orange-bellied parrot.
Right.
We did see them come through. There's lovely birds. There's the cuckoo, who does lay her eggs in the goldfinch's nest, and the swallows. You'll see swallows feeding this great big chick.
Fantail cuckoos are very common. They're like flame robins on deal.
Is that right?
There's a lot of them.
We don't have those here, do we?
Yes.
We do. Oh.
And wallabies. We did see a possum once. I do have possums there, but they're not anywhere near in shape that our possums. They're all sort of scrawny, and they're just a scruffy-looking little possum. You don't see a lot of them. You've seen seals resting on the beach, dolphins playing in the bay. It's just amazing. Dolphins come in, sea eagles, wedge-tails, they're all there. It's heaven.
Beautiful. And did you tell me that there was rabbits there the first year that you went?
Yeah, rabbits were introduced to deal in 1830s. There was no kangaroos or wallabies. Bennett's wallabies were introduced some years later. I don't know when exactly. But when we first went in 99, there was a lot of rabbits there then. But over the years, they've fluctuated in numbers. They never burrowed on deal. They scratched and, did the same things as rabbits normally do. But their numbers fluctuated. If you read some of the old stories of the original lighthouse keepers, they lived on rabbits. They had their own sheep, but rabbit was very common there then. But in probably from 2000 onwards, they started to thin out a little bit. In some years there was quite a few, but our last trip in 2021 we had no sign of a rabbit anywhere. So after, 120, 130 years, they disappeared.
So why do you think they took rabbits out there in the first place?
They did that on a lot of islands because if someone was shipwrecked there, they could live off the rabbits. They had nothing else to eat.
Right.
Other islands around the Pacific and that, they'd eat the bird life, like Providence petrels, and, some islands they'd come extinct.
Mm.
Yeah, but if you were shipwrecked on the island, you'd eat most anything.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Deal Island had a few shipwrecks, yeah.
So, Spud, what were the tasks that you had to attend to on a day-to-day basis?
Mostly we kept the compound area, which is about 8 acres around 3 existing houses there. There's the old original lighthouse keeper's house, which is a museum now. There's another house which had a lot of asbestos in it, and in recent years they've removed a lot of that. They've done a lot of work, and we used to stay in the caretaker's house, which was one that was originally moved there from Macquarie Island, and then they brick veneered it. The compound and all that, we'd have to look after that. Any painting that needed doing. We do other jobs like making seats, or down the jetty we made chairs and tables, and the same up at the houses out of driftwood. Most come from what we call Bunnings, which is Little Squally Cove, where all the salvage and stuff off the ships used to wash up in there, mostly pine timber, and we cart it up and make stuff out of it. Yeah, sometimes you find some good stuff. But a lot of it's to do with keeping the tracks open. One year we started on clearing the airstrip again, which was removing a lot of silver tussocks from it, which had overgrown.
So how did you do that?
With a mattock, yeah.
That's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, in later years, the last little bit of the airstrip was finished when they had some machinery there. They had a bobcat. They cleaned up a lot of tussocks on what you call probably the southwest end of the strip. So they knocked a lot of them out, but they also left a lot of divots in the ground by using that, and we spent a bit of time filling them in, and they eventually got it fairly clear and wide enough. I think Ronald Wise from Flinders went and fenced it. The last time we went back, that was the only way to go to the island because you weren't allowed to tie up the jetty, and the concrete roadway which runs from the jetty 700 metres up to the houses was starting to deteriorate. They had a lot of westerly weather and it eaten into the sand dunes below the track, and that was starting to collapse, so it wasn't really safe to drive a vehicle onto the jetty anymore.
So things are changing, aren't they?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what it's like now, but it was getting quite overgrown and in a poor state. The big retaining wall that protected the roadway all the way down to the jetty, they'd put a fence on top of that, and that was gathering a lot of rubbish and sand and stuff was building up on the track, and it really
Shame.
it's a shame, but it's all deteriorated. It was there for a lot of years, but now flying in is quite an easy way to do it.
Yes.
It's only half an hour from White Mark to land on the strip of Deal, and
You don't have to get seasick on the way, Kim.
No.
yeah,
I did get over it over the years, though.
loading, unloading was a lot easier out of a plane than it is standing on the side of the boat at low tide throwing bins of stuff up onto the jetty. We kind of missed that original trip,
Yes.
even though it was a bit longer, and we used to always go with James Ludington on the Straight Lady. We had some ordinary trips and we had some good trips, but we always got there safely and returned safely.
It's a real adventure, isn't it?
Well, it is.
Going by sea.
Yes, it is an adventure, and we met a lot of good people, and quite often in the changeovers we become friends with people. We got friends in Queensland and America from meeting them on Deal. There was other visitors from yachts and kayakers, even paddleboarders come across Bass Strait and you meet them.
Seems like a long way to go on a paddleboard. And did they ever stay the night?
Yeah, quite often. Yeah, sometimes kayak people would get stuck. They quite often like to go around to Winter Cove and camp there. There's a bit of a campground in amongst the she oaks. They used to stop. We had 3 fellas from Sydney one year. They got stuck there for a week and run out of food. And
So you had to share your food with them?
well, yes.
We didn't have to, but we did.
Back in them days, Ranger used to always keep a emergency supply in the other house. So if someone got stuck there for some reason or other,
We didn't feed them, but we just
had food for them.
Yeah, that's really good to know, isn't it?
Kim cooked a cake for these 3
It
fellas.
was Christmas time.
Oh, that's lovely.
Should we give them a Christmas cake? Yeah. They thought it was nice. They carried it all the way down to West Cove.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you must have read the lighthouse keeper's records
Yeah.
while you were there.
Mm.
Was there anything that stood out, any records or stories that stand out in your mind?
Yes, there was all sorts of things did happen on Deal, shipwrecks. There was a plane crash during Second World War. A training flight crashed into the hill below the lighthouse, and some of the wreckage is still there. There was 4 people, I think, perished in that, and the lighthouse keepers had to go down into the bush to find them. There is a track actually, it's marked now, and there's a track down from the lighthouse to where the crash happened. There's still a few bits there, but quite a few of the pieces have been brought back to museum, bits of engine and pieces of wing and that, but
So the lighthouse keepers would have to go and find those people and
they did.
bury them, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they buried them and then they exhumed them and took them back to Victoria. Yeah.
And so what about some of the shipwrecks that they recorded? Do you remember any stories about
Well, there
those?
was a Caratane, which is in Big Squally Cove down below the lighthouse. It ran into the cliff in the fog and it was loaded down with copper ignits. They run that to ground on the rocks in Squally Cove, or Big Squally. Then they salvaged it all sometime later.
Wow, so they got all that copper back.
There's a boat called St Nicholas, which is still visible on the beach at West Cove at Erith. They went aground there, never got off. There's quite a few shipwrecks there. There's one they dive on. I can't think of the name, but
They're pretty amazing stories, aren't they? So many islands hold small cemeteries or quiet reminders of the past. Is there something like that on any of the campgrounds?
yes, there's on Deal. There's a few graves around the place. There's one grave of a seaman who was buried in the sand dunes at Garden Cove. There's another young girl that died. She's buried just down below the houses, down in Squally, towards Squally Cove. It's got a plaque on there, and she came off a ship, only about 11 years old, died at sea, and they buried her on Deal.
Oh, goodness.
There used to be houses up at the lighthouse, and there's a grave there. It just says baby. And there's a baby buried.
And people
below the
tend to look
lighthouse.
after it. And there's one down towards the Whim below the house, and it was a lighthouse, a keeper. He died. He had a wife and 3 children there, and he died. And, of course, she was on her own. I know there's always 2 keepers. And so they contacted the authorities and they were told to keep his body in the bath or something till someone got there to do something with it. So he's buried there. And then they packed the wife and the children up and took her back to Hobart and put her and her belongings and the children on the wharf at Hobart and just left them there. Just left them there. But interestingly, our last trip up, there's a rocking chair there, and a beautiful rocking chair, and it's they're not very wide. The chair's only about 2 foot wide, if that. It's got tapestry, I suppose,
really?
And this rocking chair was someone brought it from a op shop in Hobart and then traced the history of it, and it actually belonged to this caretaker, this Thomas Haig, and he donated it then to Friends of Deal. And they've brought it back and it's in a glass case or Perspex case sitting in the museum now.
So it's come home.
It's come back to there, yeah. So this is probably sat on the jetty with this poor woman.
That's amazing. Yeah. I guess you don't know what happened to the lady and her children.
No.
Mm. And did you ever get the opportunity to explore any other islands in the Kent group?
We went to Erith. One trip, the Erith mob, there's a group of people related to Stephen Murray Smith, who was a historian in Bass Strait, and they used to always have a camp on Erith Island, and there's still a hut there, and they've got a campground up above the hut in the bush, and all the family used to go there usually in the summer, and they were still doing that when we were visiting the island. We got to know the Murray Smiths a bit, even though their parents had passed away. We were actually there one trip when they scattered her ashes on the hill, the mother's ashes. We spoke to her the first time that we went there, but she died in recent years, and we went over for that with on the Straight Lady. And another trip, we put the signs up when they declared it a marine park, and a couple of ladies from Hobart come up who designed the signs. So we put a sign up there with Wayne the ranger, and then a couple of signs on Deal itself, one at the jetty at East Cove and another one at Garden Cove, just so people could know there was a marine park, even though you'd have to go down and yell at some people to say you're not supposed to be fishing in the bay.
We went another time just over to visit the Erith mob. They come and got us. Probably weren't supposed to, but we went over there and had a few drinks. We learned all about industrial strength gin. Do you like a gin? And no. But I said you have to be careful because it's industrial strength. It's sort of like
yeah. Sometimes they call us on the radio. We had a radio in the house. One time they called us. They said we're leaving in a few days' time. They used to come and go with a fellow Win Hobson in a catamaran from Welshpool. Used to come and pick them up and deliver them. And they used to always have more food than what they really needed. And this particular time they said, they're going to send the grandson Tom over with some veggies for us. Could you use them? And we said, yeah, we could use a few things, but we're going home shortly ourselves. So we met him down the jetty. We took the little ute down the jetty. Well, there was half a box of apples, about 40 pumpkins and enough stuff to feed us for a month.
Plant the pumpkin seeds. They come up every year.
But they were good fun.
Yeah, we had a good time with them. They'd come and they'd go up to Lighthouse and have a look. And,
every time.
Yeah, every time they come over. But nice people.
It's pretty amazing out there isolated like that, and you've made all these connections and friends. And I do recall you talking about there was lots of seals out on the rock.
That's on Judgment Rocks.
That's another story.
James Lunnington, the Straight Lady, used to take around Bass Strait to all these sites of where the seals haul out, and Judgment Rocks, which is out near South West Island, probably 3 or 4 nautical miles from Deal, not that far. And they put them ashore there, and they actually stay on the rock. There's the main rock at Judgment Rocks is about 60 foot high, with a big flat rock where the seals haul out. When you go there, there's about 2,000 seals in the water, all with their nose sticking out.
That's amazing.
The seal counters, they camp on the rock.
How do they get on the rock without slipping off the rock? Because wouldn't there be a lot of seal poop?
They ferry them in the dinghy. And one trip, James and Wayne, the ranger, grabbed me to go with them, just to go out to get them off. And when we got there, they all seemed to be taking their sweet time about getting around to get their gear down because they had a heap of gear. I wondered what was keeping them, making them so slow, but then realised that we'd had this bit of easterly weather and it was real damp. And, of course, all the seal shit on the rock becomes like a skating rink. So just to keep on your feet, let alone cart all your stuff down to the rock near the water's edge so you can load it back on the boat.
It would be pretty smelly too, wouldn't it?
Well, James went back and forwards with a dinghy and we just held the straight lady in the bay and grabbed the gear off him as he brought it into us. Anyway, as soon as all the seal counters and all their gear's back on board, one tried to walk in the wheelhouse, so James gave him the run quick smart back on the back deck because everything, all their gear, all their clothes, everything just smells like
It's revolting.
seal shit. So when we get back to Deal, we just threw it up on the jetty, carted up to the house and put the hose on it.
Oh, that'd be smelly spending the night there. And you wouldn't want to slip off the rock into the water either, would you?
Well, the last fella that got into the dinghy, he slipped and went in to drink.
Oh.
But he was like a porpoise. He come straight out, back out again. Because where there's 2,000 seals, there's always a chance there's one of them big things with fins and
With big teeth. So you two have been a part of a long line of people who've cared for Deal Island. How does it feel being part of that story?
It was pretty special. The island, it engulfs you. The island just takes over. Even when I think of Deal Island, I feel happy. You know, like it was a really great part of our life. It actually made me appreciate Flinders Island more. I never felt lonely on Deal. I still have moments on Flinders where that happens. But on Deal, even though it was only two of us, I don't know what it was. You just felt part of the place. I didn't feel lonely the whole time I was there. I missed my family or my friends. It just felt like home.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's an amazing place, yeah.
Because you really are on the edge of Bass Strait out there.
Yeah.
It's
And
no
you are on your
spectacular scenery, no matter where you walk. We walked all over Deal, found some beautiful spots, just up through the creek running up from Winter Cove. Though most of the island is she oak, there's parts of it are peppermint gum. And where you go up Winter Cove Creek, there's just beautiful straight peppermint gums with ferns underneath. They're just beautiful.
That's pretty unusual.
Not many tree ferns on Deal. There's only ever been recorded one or two tree ferns. But there's all sorts of interesting things. We come across an orchid that was supposed to be on Deal, but no one had actually taken a photo, recorded it.
Oh, so you got to do that? You got to take the
We
photo?
found that. Then a few years later, some other friends of ours found another one. And then there's a particular orchid that grows on Deal that doesn't grow in Tassie. And they'd found it in one particular spot and hadn't seen it for years. And we were taking a shortcut through the scrub and come across it in a different place. So the botanist type of people that do a lot of work on Deal, they were really excited to see that.
Bet.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of things just turn up.
We did some walks in the most atrocious places. It just follow me. It was safe. I mean, nothing unsafe, but we just did some things you'd think, why did we come here? And I'd be following my guide or my pack horse, he was at the time. He carried the pack.
We did have a bright idea to Big Squally Cove on the southeast end of the island. Very hard to get to. You've got to go at low tide or climb over the hills. I got a bright idea that I'd go up Winter Cove Creek and we'll go up over the saddle there, and it all looked pretty good, all gum trees. But underneath the gum trees was tea tree as thick that you couldn't push through it. But when we eventually got down into the bay there, I said to Kim, you know, if a dinosaur run down off the hill, you wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
It just felt like that could happen.
Yeah.
His wife did growl the whole way there. It was a shocking walk. We've got a map at home of Deal Island, and we've marked our trips on it. And I reckon we've just about traversed the whole thing, just going for a walk, not doing anything particular. Like our afternoons, we'd work in the morning, and then we'd have lunch and we'd set off and we'd go somewhere. And except Sundays, that was fishing day. Yeah, weather dependent.
You got your own little routine happening. That's really how we should all be living, isn't it?
Yeah. We often say we should go back to how it was on Deal, but you don't.
Yes, we'd often work the first part of the day. Some days if we were doing a lot of mowing or had tracks to mow or that, we'd spend the whole day doing that. Some of the tracks are quite steep. You can only get on them with a brush cutter, so you spend the whole day doing that. But then next day you might only work in the morning, might have a bit of painting to do or a bit of something to do, and then after lunch we go walking somewhere.
It was good life.
I guess places like that stay with you, and so do the stories that come from them.
It's changed quite a bit on Deal since the jetties closed and that. There's a lot of things happened in the time we were there, and I'd just like to thank those parks people who were involved, particularly Wayne Dick. Some of the things he achieved there, like with the solar system they put on, and that was quite amazing really, that the amount of work he got done there. And a lot of those old ranges are sort of gone by the by now. And it's
They were
quite a shame.
hands-on.
They were hands-on people, and they
Left
didn't
a bit of a
mind.
legacy for you to continue with.
Yeah. It's a shame that it's changed a bit there now. I suppose it's time, everything changes in time.
It seems to, doesn't it?
But it is a beautiful place to visit, and a lot of boat people, yacht people still visit it. They like to go up to the museum and look at the visitors book to see when they were there last time. And yeah, there's all sorts. We used to get the Young Endeavour come in there, and the tall ship. Yeah, that was terrific. Yeah.
But we will miss it, and I would like my ashes spread there. Although having been a Catholic, I'm not supposed to get burnt, so that could pose a problem.
But it's a place anybody should really visit.
Yes.
While Flinders is very beautiful, and a lot of places on Flinders are spectacular, nearly anywhere you go on Deal, on a walk on the cliffs or
Just looking out the kitchen window.
just at the kitchen window is just spectacular. Very
Highly
beautiful
recommend
place.
it to any Flinders Island couple that want to go and do it, and you've got the time, do it.
Take the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. It'll only come once these days.
So places like Deal Island and the islands of the Kent Group carry layers of history, from ancient land bridges and early travellers to lighthouse keepers, and now the volunteer caretakers who continue to look after what remains. Spud and Kim, you are part of that amazing story. You didn't just pass through, but you helped care for a place that asks something of everyone who spends time there. From Flinders Island to the remote edges of Bass Strait, your journey is a reminder that our history isn't just something we read about. It's something we create and live. Thank you both for sharing your island adventures with me today.
Thanks,
Thank
Jackie.
you.
We acknowledge the ancient history of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the first people of Lutruwita, Tasmania. This episode is recorded on the lands and waters of the Furneaux Islands. We recognise the continuing spiritual and ancestral connections of Tasmanian Aboriginal people to these islands, and we honour the strength, resilience and living culture of Aboriginal people today.